Magic switch. I'm going to just crowd over Steve since you need all the space tonight.
Yeah, we can move over.
Crashing into everybody.
Yeah. Okay, we are
You're fine.
online. Let's go ahead and get started. The Centerville City Council is now in session. Apologize for being the one to make us late this evening. I'd hoped to make it 4 years without being late to a city council meeting. We made it 3.5.
I think
That's a pretty good record. That really is.
But so we'll note for the record that all members, or that we have 4 out of 5 members of the city council here. Tammy Fillmore is out of town on vacation, will not be with us tonight. We're pleased tonight to have a scout, Ben Brushworth, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll invite him to come to the microphone and invite folks to stand and join him in the pledge, after which we'll invite Councilman McEwen to provide either a prayer or a thought or both for us this evening before we start the rest of our meeting.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Repeat the pledge after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ben.
In preparation for tonight's thought, I've been drawn to think about the many issues facing our community now and into the future. For example, the desire of property owners to redevelop their land to accommodate a potential influx of new population growth is probably one of the greatest issues city councils in Centerville will face for many years to come. And it is fair to state that we are running out of room for both for the living and the dead. This is our challenge as we move forward. What do we do? Should we declare Centerville at its maximum population density and say we're out of room? Stop all new development which involves any density changes and say we are maintaining an idyllic notion of a family-oriented bedroom community? Or do we rethink Centerville, what it should be, and perhaps change some of the assumptions which have been long held and encourage development and density increases, which in the minds of some will make our community a better and a more prosperous place to live in? From my perspective, no matter how far the legislative pendulum swings to either side of this debate, all property owners living in Centerville are impacted. And it doesn't matter whether you've lived here 50 years or 5 years, inherently the majority of people operate under the belief that individual property rights are sacrosanct and should trump all other concerns. In reality, I think we should accept that the theories of social contract put forward by philosophers such as Locke and Rousseau hundreds of years ago still apply to us today, in that as an individual member of society, we cooperate for the social benefit for the group as a whole. This does not mean in all cases that I need to give up my individual rights so that the society can function. Far from it. A government has obligations to those whom it governs, and that is the protection of personal rights. In the struggle to maintain a peaceful coexistence under that social contract, a fair and honest elected official attempts to achieve parity among all property owners when planning and zoning in the community. Unfortunately, the concept of parity is often in direct conflict with the sacrosanct nature of individual property rights, and therefore the possibility always exists that any decision can be considered a deliberate attempt to inflict injury or unjustly curtail the individual rights. In practice, this is rarely the case. In closing, I want to say that I'm fortunate to have both a city council and a community actively seeking to protect and maintain Centerville. I'm honored to serve with all of you in this continuing great adventure of self-governance. May we all have wisdom and compassion in our decisions, and may good intent for the betterment of the community regulate all that we do.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the open session. This is the time that we have at the beginning of each council meeting that allows any member of the public to come and speak on a matter of municipal concern. We also have a continued public hearing scheduled later around the proposed uses for Main Street. So if you're here to speak at either the public hearing about proposed change to allow construction, sales, and services limited on Main Street, or to speak about the Parish Creek subdivision. We'd invite you to speak during those public hearings. Otherwise, if there's anyone who would like to speak during our open session, the session is now open. We invite you to come to the microphone, state your name and city of residence for record so we can put you on the permanent record and capture your comments.
Is this on?
It's on.
Okay. My name is
and
Don.
you're being streamed on YouTube for the whole internet to see, just so you know.
Oh, okay, great.
All 6 people who may be watching.
My name is Don Olson. We live in Hidden Acres, which is on 440, well, we live 440 East, 475 South. And we used to live in Sheridan Circle. But my concern that I wanted to address tonight, and if I understand it correctly, is the old catch basin, which has been a nice little public area that we have used for many, many years, ever since it was established. And a lot of seniors walk through there. A lot of seniors with their dogs walk through there. And it's been very convenient for us. Now, if I understand correctly, there will be 3 lots sold on the south side of that, which will block the access directly from the lower end, which is where we typically go into that area, or had before it was fenced. And why it was fenced, I have no idea, since it was open for so many years. Now, I understand that if we wanted to traverse there from 3rd South, or 2nd South to 1st South, we would have to go to the top of those 3 lots, find our way over, come down through the property, and then go over. Is that correct?
That's the plan that has been negotiated with the county.
Is there any reason or way that there could be a possible pathway at the bottom?
So I guess I would respond to that we had significant negotiations with the county over the last
6 months.
6+ months.
Yeah, almost.
The council expressed their preference to have access from the west side.
From the west side?
That's
from
the downhill.
South side?
From the southwest.
Okay, the south side, I understand. Okay, the west end of the...
This has been a negotiation with the county as
Okay.
the owner of the property. We have negotiated, as on the agenda tonight, that they are going to deed the north half to the city that will be kept perpetually open, the catch basin portion, and in return, they will develop those 3 lots. So it's not Centerville City doing it, it's Davis County, and provide an easement across the top for a walkway, but not across the bottom.
Why are they objecting to one across the bottom? I mean, can't they just slide those 3 lots up a little?
I can't speak for them. There is a water line across the top.
Yes.
And from a access point of view, it's much easier to maintain the access across the top than to cut a new path across the bottom. But that, all of the professionals have said this is the best option. But we appreciate your opinion.
Okay.
And
Well, chalk me up for saying I'd like to see something across the bottom, because I don't want to have to hike that hill every time I walk through there. All right, thank you.
thank you very much. Anybody else? If not, we'll close the public hearing and move on to our agenda, which includes that item. But first, we have a couple of minutes to take care of. We have minutes review for the August 1st work session and regular city council meeting, and then the August 8th hearing on property taxes. Were there any changes to the meeting minutes as written that are suggested? I don't believe I had any changes, and would, if you don't have any changes, I would look for a motion to approve all 3 sets
I
of
would make a motion
minutes.
that we approve all 3 sets of minutes as listed in the agenda.
I'll second that.
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Great. Then the next item, we've been waiting at least 6 months or more for. Lisa will provide us a staff update on this proposed interlocal agreement between Centerville City and Davis County on First South property.
Yes. So as you know, we've been working, I'd say closer to a year, but at least since January. We had a meeting back in January of working with the county to try to acquire some of their property on between 100 South and 200 South. And we have negotiated an interlocal agreement with the county where they will be able to develop 3 lots on 200 South, and the city will be able to retain as open space about 1 acre on 100 South. And so we are going to waive some development fees for the county so they can develop their lots as compensation for purchase of that property. And then we're also granting the county a flood control easement across the property. So we have worked out this interlocal agreement. Numerous drafts have gone back and forth between the parties, but we have all the exhibits have been prepared and acceptable. And I talked with Mike Kendall over at the county attorney's office today, and he said that the county commission at their meeting today approved this agreement. And at 1 or 2 o'clock, Tony Thompson, their economic development director, hand-delivered the signed versions of the agreement. So I would like to give my thanks to Mike Kendall and the attorney's office and the surveyors, Max Elliott, and the commissioners as well for their work on this and cooperation. I think it's a win-win, and hopefully will be a good piece of open space for the city. So staff is recommending approval. Since it's an interlocal agreement, we do approve that by resolution, which is in your packet as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lisa, let me add to that report, just so you're aware that the waiver of fees will total about $15,000, so that's not a cash outlay for us. And then there'll be, the cash outlay will be whatever our ESI's fees are related to the review and approval of the zoning and subdivision application, so a few $1,000s there. So I'm going to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of $18,000 to $20,000 between fee waivers and fees and the fees that we would pay. And it's my recommendation, unless you direct me otherwise, to pay any out-of-pocket costs of that nature would come out of RAP taxes, because this is a open space or natural park area.
Would it come out of RAP tax, or would it come out of impact fees?
Well, we did not identify, this area, park is not identified in the park impact fee plan, so you can't use it for that.
Okay.
So.
I have one question. They still have to go through the planning commission and do everything else as far as getting these lots approved and developed and everything?
Yes, and in the
rezoned and
agreement, it
subdivided.
does say that if they do not get their rezone or their subdivision approved, then this recording is void and we're going to have to go back to the beginning. But we decided in order to move it forward, it was chicken and the egg. Let's just obtain the property, which they were willing to grant to us prior to actually having approval of the subdivision. So, but if it doesn't go through, but we're retaining all right of zoning authority throughout the process.
There was a question about the spillway pipe that was brought up last time. You had mentioned an easement for that. I didn't catch that in the document.
Yeah,
What
and
ended
they
up happening with
said that they don't believe it's an underground pipe and that maybe it was in a different location. So I think we've disclosed our knowledge to them, but they didn't have any response back on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be further examined during the subdivision approval
During the
process.
development, certainly, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll note that neither side got everything that they wanted out of this negotiation, but I think that we can all agree that the proposal to open back up this portion and make it available is better than the status quo of having this fenced in, and is better long-term for our community. So I would hope that the council would approve this, and
I'm looking towards Stephanie as the passionate individual who came at this the hardest to do that.
Go ahead.
Are you going to make a motion?
Would you like to? You're welcome to.
This is your,
No,
this
I
is
have
your
one
issue.
question.
Okay, go ahead and ask.
I've had at least 5 people ask me the same question we just heard about West Walkway. Obviously, we
It's
can't
a
go
huge-
back to the well with the city.
No, and I think there was some good reason, and some of it was on our part as well. If, I don't know if you, we probably don't have the aerial anymore, but in some of our previous, you could see that. It's a more dangerous path. We really don't want them going across, so that's probably fine. If you look at that, they are reserving an easement and also an access, but you'll remember there's a significant concrete area there where if people entered at that lower point, it could be a safety hazard going across that way. So it's much safer to have them go up to the top. And I know it's a little out of the way, but we did try to maintain that. The other thing, we were just going to get an easement, and the county actually said, we'll deed that to you. We'd prefer not to have a pedestrian pathway easement on a private lot, which I think was a good decision. So you'll see on there the pink access way comes all the way down, and that hooks up with our property as well, and there'll be a much safer access there on the eastern side.
I guess the only issue is that especially in the early construction period, the lot on the west is going to be a bone of contention with people cutting through. And if there was any way that we could convince the county to shave a foot off of each of the 3 lots, which is not much.
I really would prefer not to go
Not to
back
even
to
have
the
the
negotiating
conversation.
board. But
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask.
Maybe that might be a subtle hint to the developer that you could probably save yourself some animosity with the future property owners, because I think that is going to be an issue, but I think this is a pretty good deal.
However, her comment about having to cross then that culvert
Yeah, that's
is a
real
big
concern.
issue.
It's a pretty
And the
big
other issue is
drop-off.
if you go in at the bottom, I have walked around the property, and it loops back into the backyards, which also is not really desirable for some private lots.
Okay.
Well, I am really grateful to see something finally in writing that says the fence can come down. So with that in mind, I move that we accept the interlocal agreement between Centerville City and Davis County for the transfer and development of this property. What exactly do I need to say in that?
So, and approving resolution
Resolution
2000
2017-17.
and also authorizing staff to execute any required documents.
That. Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion, a second, to approve Resolution 2017-17, this interlocal between Davis County and Centerville City that would finalize this agreement on the First South and associated documentation with that. Any further discussion on this matter? If not, let's do it by roll call vote, starting with George.
Aye.
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 That is unanimous. So thank you for those who have been very patient with this. And
We'll be up with the wire cutters.
yes, so tomorrow can we?
The county will be taking down the fence.
Commissioner Elliott said he would help.
You don't want me and staff to go take that down tomorrow?
It's like a ribbon cutting ceremony,
my way
only
home, I
more
could-
dangerous.
It could be fun. We need to get the signed document back to them on Thursday, and then they will work as diligently as they can to get that fence down.
Okay, good
Thank
news.
you.
Thank you, Lisa.
They may have, huh? Next up, we have a public hearing scheduled for a zoning code amendment on construction, sales, and services, limited. We heard from our Community Development Director, Corey, in the past, Corey Snyder, on this issue, and we tabled this last time to allow for additional public comment. Corey, could you give us a summary staff report of the issue and the Planning Commission's recommendation regarding this?
Sure. This was a request of the city to amend our ordinances to allow construction sales and service. So there's a larger definition that was originally proposed. That arrived to the table of the Planning Commission. They debated it. Their first meeting, they decided to give direction to staff to change or modify the request to create a construction sales and services limited. So that would narrow the types of uses that broadly you had lumber yards and other elements with a large outdoor storage. And they wanted to address the issue of the outdoor storage on the main street. And so they wanted a new definition to narrow construction sales and services so you could have some plumbing and electrical contractors and their equipment to be able to be used in that district. But they also recommend a restriction on outdoor storage. So in addition to what the request was, they will be modifying the CM zone in the South Main Street area to no outdoor storage with any construction, sales, and services limited. And that was to address the parameters of the South Main Street corridor, the concerns of outdoor storage, and to also narrow to the idea that this would be a local contractor and some equipment, and it would all be done indoors. They received that from staff in preparation, held their public hearing, and they recommended a positive to you to adopt the new limited version of construction sales and services with no outdoor storage.
Thank you. And I'll note that to be very clear, the driving force behind this was the plans for a new fire station in Centerville and the proposal to sell the old fire station. And there's a potential buyer who is interested in locating a construction office in that building, which set this chain in motion. Before we open the public hearing, I think that the council's taken this very seriously, not as what's best for all of Main Street, not just one building, and is very inviting of public comment on what the public's feelings are on this, and may or may not decide to act on this tonight or consider it further and get more info. Anything else before
Could I get Corey to come back up for just a
Sure.
second?
Questions before we open the public hearing?
The beauties of YouTube is people tend to transcribe and quote us, and they've quoted you, and I just want to make sure you're still okay with the statement, or if this is not a good transcription to go for it. Say it's
I
different.
probably said it, but now let's just see if it's...
Okay. The in quotes, so we're assuming this begins your quotation, says the overall caption of construction, sales, and service is pretty broad. Typical uses could be lumber yards, home improvement centers, lawn, garden supply stores, construction equipment, construction trade contractors, and storage yards. Today it's a small use, tomorrow it might be someone trying to push it to a different level of intensity. Push comes to shove, we lean to the denial side. The list of negatives goes on longer than the positives.
That's pretty close to what I discussed in the staff report as well as verbally.
So you'd say that that's an accurate statement, you'd stick with it?
I still tend on the denial side simply for the policies of the Main Street, South Main Street plan and the history of what happened through time, including 2003 revisions. So I still remain on the wouldn't support side.
Okay.
I'm trying to be softer.
People's
in my
YouTube transcriptions hold
presentation.
true. Okay, I just want to make sure that was close to what you said.
And I want to know that I respect Corey's position that this is not necessarily true to the original intent of the Main Street plan. My personal feeling is, as I've expressed before, I'm more of a pragmatic problem solver. I'm trying to solve a problem of public safety, and to me this seems like a way to solve it in a way that does not hurt our Main Street, but I respect others that might have different opinions on this.
So,
Any other questions before we open it?
no.
So why don't we go ahead and open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to come and speak about this topic of changing the zoning use to allow construction, sales, and services limited in commercial medium, especially on Main Street. And please come and state your name and city of residence for the record when you speak. Is there anyone who we can get to comment on this?
My name's Jeff Cook. I'm a Centerville resident. Excuse me, got a little congestion going on. My address is 582 North, 340 East. And, you know, I'm really kind of surprised. I guess I'm not familiar with ordinances and things as they are, that this is really something that has got to be changed. You know, if we talk historically about Centerville Main Street, I mean, historically, Centerville Main Street has been local businesses. I mean, and frankly, I feel like we've been under attack the last 3 or 4 years for whatever reasons. I don't understand, but it seems like there's a lot of negative commenting and influence going on regarding Main Street, and I look at it and I think, and we could go business by business, and I think most of you know that nearly every business, almost all of them, are Centerville residents, longtime Centerville residents. And all we're trying to do is work in our hometown. And so you've got Shoup Electric. They do more than that. They're in all kinds of different electronic fields. They're wanting to come up to Main Street and have an office where people can come and visit them on Main Street at their office instead of down in an industrial park. And I can't think of a better use on Main Street than that. I mean, my family has owned and operated Cook Realtors, Cook Builders, Global Security, my brother-in-law. I mean, you name it. You know, those 2 or 3 businesses anyway. We've been on the corner of 4th South and Main for, I don't know, since the late 60s, I guess, or something. And Hogan and Tingey was always down the road, and I know things change and evolve a little bit, but you know, I mean, you got the Arbuckles and the Pitts, and you got Huff Acres and Leon Nielsen with his accounting office, and Renee Fidel? Ann Fidel, thanks. Ann Fidel with her insurance office and stuff, all Centerville people. Now, okay, you don't have to be a Centerville person to have a business on Main Street in Centerville, but you can see that's pretty much what it is. And I mean, I think a city, and I hope I'm not taking too much at odds with Corey, but I can say this because we often don't see eye to eye, but we're always kind and thoughtful to each other. But I think rather than looking at it more as a favoring in denial or something, I think that's kind of a negative way to approach something. I think a council, I mean, you're all Centerville citizens as well. I think we should be looking for ways to help local residents and businesses succeed and do well, not trying to limit them or not allow it. I mean, I can't think of one reason, not one, why Shoup Electric couldn't locate up there. Nothing is going to change. I mean, if anything, the one thing you won't have is sirens going off in the neighborhood in the middle of the night, because I know they don't have any of those.
So
I
just be a little bit further south.
I just really want to appeal to the council members to, you know, think of the people that are specifically involved with properties and what it would mean to them, and it isn't detrimental to the city. In fact, in my opinion, it brings one more solid business that'll keep an attractive place to Main Street. And the fire district or fire, whatever it is, fire station, they're gonna relocate just a little further south probably. And that's gonna clean up another part of Main Street. That's gonna make it more beautiful. And that's how Main Street is gonna develop. I don't know that I am not a commercial guru or anything, so I can't say what will or wouldn't happen, but it seems to me historically that Centerville Main Street has been a business district, not really a retail center. I think most of you would agree with that. There's some retail. I mean, we used to have Pork and Betty's, wish we still did. I mean, you know, the lumber yard. I never knew it when it was really lumber yard. I knew it when it just had really good tacos. But I think that's what it's been historically, in Frank's Garage and Ron's Service. I mean, I think that's what Centerville's Main Street is. And now we got a chance for another Centerville family to move in and help solidify what we want for Main Street. And we know what we're going to get with them. You know, they're going to keep it up. It's going to look nice. It's going to, I mean, trust me, in the construction trade, there's just not that much in and out traffic. Very, very little. We're doing all our work out and away. It's an office. It's a place where we can meet people, talk about things, go over plans. It's not a construction yard. Anyway, I would just hope that you'd think about that, and that I think that would really improve Main Street, because it keeps that place just as nice as it is now. Plus, they move, create another nice place. And I think that's how our Centerville Main Street is you know, going to progress and build and become, you know, going to become a little nicer. And I love the fact that it's, you know, a local family. You know, I think that's great. I have been so appreciative over the years that we've been able to do our business, have our place of business in Centerville. I mean, I've always said it kind of kiddingly, but pretty seriously, I'll run into people who travel a lot, you know, and I'll tell them, you know, when I go out of town, I go to Bountiful or Farmington. and, you know, to be able to be in Centerville, I mean, I can walk to work if I want, only done it a time or two. But you know what I mean? It's nice to be home. And it means a lot. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
I'm Dale Ingerson. I live on Center Street, and I really came for the first part, and I missed it, so I have to say something. But I guess, and this is some clarification from, if not shoot, what else? You know what I'm saying? I mean, what is it exactly that is allowed there? When I was working on my stuff, I knew a little bit of that stuff, but I mean, you know, is it that doesn't meet the new, what's it called, the city, the Main Street plan, or, you know, whatever it is? I mean, and what would they, is there something they could do that they would meet that, you know, that they could meet that qualification? I guess then if not, then, you know, you could be a whole lot more specific to what you do, you know, what kind of things would be allowed there. But I mean, you know, I haven't studied it enough to honestly know, but it just seems to me that it would make sense. I mean, I really like what Mr. Cook just said, a lot of the stuff, and you know, like he says, you know what you're going to get. You know, they're going to be here for a long time, a couple more generations anyway. So anyway, so that's all I had to say, and I just, like I say, if not shoot, you know, what else? And why not shoot? So, okay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else?
Can I add a few more thoughts?
Please.
Do it every time.
That's what we're here for.
Kyle Shoup with Shoup Electric. The one thing that just keeps going over and over in my mind is we've set this limited use up with the construction, sales, and service, and with that building, you know, I think it fits us perfectly, but I think you've pretty well restricted any type of lumberyard, nasty construction service company from coming up onto Main Street. Now, from what I understand, in that small zone, we're talking about from 4 South to 150 north. Is that correct, Corey? But in this specific zone that we're dealing with, south, okay, so the CM zone to Parish. So, but I think we've limited the opportunity. It's basically almost like saying construction, sales and service, office type, use is pretty much what it comes to. And I just keep going over and over thinking, I can't see a Home Depot coming up on the main street. I can't see, Lon Butler keeps being brought up. You can't see Lon Butler coming up with all their equipment. We've kind of limited that, and to have the opportunity, one, that we're not noisy neighbors at night. If something goes in there that's restaurant oriented or something like that could go in, that they're getting deliveries at 4 or 5 in the morning, late at night, whatever. We don't have that issue. I think it's a great opportunity that it's just from 7 to 5 in the afternoon, and we're done with our business. We close up. We keep a clean yard. Everything we do in our business is, we do it to the best of our ability, and it's going to be the same way with the building. We're dealing, of course, with construction, sales, and services, not Shoup Electric on Main Street, and that's a little different, but looking at how much more things can happen on Main Street with the buildings that exist. I don't think there's a lot of room for anybody else to really come in, and then if they do and decide to knock something down, of course, then we deal with the new Main Street overlay, and it creates other issues. Now, the other thing I kept thinking about as well is going back to with the Planning and Zoning Commission, they talked about, well, what could be offered here? I think the question was brought up, what could you put there? And that came up well, and I think, Corey, you mentioned it, place of worship, a church, or other things, but then we deal with a different occupancy class. It changes the occupancy, which then in turn makes them go to the Main Street overlay. They knock the building down or remodel, push it forward to the street. I just don't see this building having much opportunity for anything other than kind of a niche business like we are. So I'd really appreciate your consideration. Again, we've been in business for 30 years. We love Centerville. We want to stay here. Our intentions are to continue to, be a wonderful support to the community of Centerville. We've always supported Viewmont High School with, lacrosse and football and baseball and things like that, and just want to continue to be a staple and a good force for good here in the community. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Anybody else who'd like to speak?
Dave Bell from Centerville. I didn't know this gentleman Shoup. I'd like to just say, as a business owner in this city for 25 years, that, my goodness, you absolutely should. If a business owner is trying to do something in the community, and he's been here and he's been a good member of the community, and for what I know about the business, he has been, I would think you guys should do everything in your power to help him make an accommodation so that he can expand his business, support his family, more employees in the area, keep the business local. As a business owner in this city for a quarter of a century, that's what I'm doing with my children and the men now that have worked for me for 20 plus years, and now they got their kids, and one of them will probably come to work for me. My goodness, that's a marvelous thing for an old guy that's worked a long time in this community. But this, let this happen. This is what Centerville is about. That's what it was about when I first came here, and I think that's what you all really want to continue, that community. That's it.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else like to comment? If not, council, I'd happy to close the public hearing and turn it to you for deliberation. Seeing no one else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it to you if you want to discuss it further or go ahead and take action on it, how you want to proceed. I had one more question for Corey, a clarifying question. Under the current, if no changes were made and some of our existing contractors on Main Street, Mr. Cook or, for example, Larson Electric, who also has a shop on Main Street, if they were to, and who have both expressed interest in building new buildings, if they were to build a new building, would they still be allowed to keep their business on Main Street? Or does the regulation as listed now prohibit that?
It's a broad assumption. You got to remember that you have a use, and then you have the whole Main Street design element. The non-conforming uses are restricted and would have to follow the non-conforming restrictions. And so that comes into play just under the CM zone. So take the Main Street overlay away for a minute on the design elements. The CM zone doesn't allow these uses now. You know, our
legal non-conforming uses.
our staff report recognized these uses from the past, but they disappeared by 2003. So by 2003 in the CM zone, construction, sales, and service disappeared off the use list of the CM zone. And so they're restricted as non-conforming uses. And so they have a limited ability. As they are, they can continue. As they change and expand, non-conforming regulations come in. And the purpose of non-conforming regulations is to inhibit those expansions. Take it away and you put construction, sales, and services back in, just pretend, and now we throw the overlay on top on the design. There's a different set of elements that come into play, and that's called what the building occupancy rating under the building code is. And our Main Street overlay is basically saying we don't want you to expand buildings above 30%. We don't want you to make significant changes to the property. And if you change the occupancy, change your uses, and reach those thresholds, we now want a new footprint, bringing buildings closer to the street, putting the parking to the sides and the rear. And so they could be caught in both places. And that's the part that I've talked about Mr. Shoup about, is it's not from our perspective that Shoup's operation is necessarily a bad thing. You decide whether it goes back into the CM zone. What I see the restriction is once you put Shoup back into the CM zone and he can come back in as a contractor in sales and services, you have handcuffed limited to that building. If it changes occupancy or expands, there's no possibility beyond that minor threshold of nonconformity to add to the buildings and make it a bigger place and add more storage, because the overlay is saying, no, don't do that till we reformat the property.
But how's that different than today?
Yeah. Well, because the nonconformities allowed a completely different layout and it's minor expansions under the nonconformities. You make them conforming, then they're open to whatever the zoning setbacks, bulk area requirements, and Mr. Shoup is still going to be handcuffed under the overlay. And so you are just simply adding something in existing form, but there's no ability to expand, and that's what I'm trying to address, is your issue of getting a bigger building and so forth.
But shouldn't we also be thinking long-term about some of our other businesses and their ability to expand, Mr.?
Yeah, I think this is the crux of the issue of Main Street. What do you want Main Street to be? If you want it to be like the CM zone and modify those uses in a historic pattern, you've changed those in 2003. And are you wanting to return back to them, some of them? And do you want to change the Main Street overlay to limit that handcuffing that occurs for uses that are either non-conforming or in a status quo?
And just to make clear my position, I think the overlay is a good thing. I think bring those design standards to upgrade buildings are a good thing, a positive thing for long-term redevelopment. I don't see a reason not to allow construction, sales, and services as long as they conform to those new design standards.
What I'm hearing, though, and let me reinterpret this, is it's actually prohibitive for any kind of renovation or long-term development because it's cost prohibitive. If you more than 30%, you have to scoot the building up. I mean, how does that affect the new fire station, for example?
A lot.
No, we have to conform.
A lot.
Right. So the fire station what would the fire station look like under the current Main Street overlay, the new fire station?
Well,
where would its setback be?
That's what the internal debate's been going on for months.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we're circling around the issue, which Robin actually brought to my attention. I'm not stealing your thunder. Is the overlay seems to be inhibitive of of business and of future development like the fire station. I mean, what would it look like today using the Main Street overlay to put in the new fire station?
The building, depending on the lot type, there'll be some adjustment to setbacks, and different lot types have setbacks, but you're somewhere around 10 to 15 feet roughly. You would not have a parking apron out front, or vehicles out front, or apparatus out front, or new access out front. It would all be off the side streets, and the building would face the front with its nice design expected by the form-based code.
So a fire station has 15 feet to get its vehicle out and onto the street versus what it's got now?
Yeah, so
Those are
No,
the
it can't have a
issues.
new cut.
Yeah, so obviously, when we did the Main Street design overlay, we weren't thinking about fire stations. And
Correct.
I think it's legitimate to come back and say, okay, public safety is a legitimate need that might have a different needs than are purely aesthetic,
Right, but
design
that's where
guidelines.
my discussion,
But-
Mayor, with you is where we have our arguments behind the scenes is you can't treat the fire station different than other users into the area. Whatever you modify for the fire station, you're going to modify the form-based code for all users.
So tenant irrespective, Shoup or whoever goes into the existing fire station building, they're pretty much can't do much. That building is going to stay as it is because of the amount it's going to have to be brought forward with awnings or whatever meets compliance. So they do a 30% renovation and suddenly that's going to be a lot to bring that building up.
Right, and that's the issue, and I think that's the debate, is where do you want to draw the line? Main Street, you're trying to achieve over to the form-based code, or are we trying to amend it away and get it back to something different or closer to the original CM zone?
Or can we look at it and say, we have these long-term goals to redevelop a nice, aesthetically positive Main Street, but we may need to do a few tweaks. We want to keep the spirit of a positive.
But that's the issue, it's not a
Form.
few tweaks, it's a major tweak.
But are we invoking spot zoning to do this?
So that's for you to decide. In my opinion, allowing those uses does not conflict with the general goals. In Corey's opinion, you're not being true to the spirit of the Main Street plan. I think different people can see it differently.
Oh, I agree. We've had so many controversies over the Main Street plan over the years, and with the Main Street overlay, in some ways, and I've had this discussion with Robin, did the Main Street overlay damage the property values? And I would contend that it did, because the fire station has, Shoup, your first date for the fire station because you've got something that will fit the existing oddball building. But if theoretically, if that Main Street overlay were in play in a different format, that property might have a different value and be actually more attractive because somebody might want to knock it down and put something else on that corner.
There's no doubt about it that we could get family dollar stores with cinder block buildings and car dealerships and all sorts of things if we were to open things up. But we've purposely said we want higher quality buildings on the
Well, how are you going to
street.
get higher quality buildings if you've constrained them to 30% and then you have to scoot the building up to meet these setbacks?
We've shown that you've got Matt's Place. They came and built anyway, even though there were strict design standards. So it can happen. We shouldn't say it will never happen, because it can happen. And I think we can find a compromise for the fire station as well. But it's not simple.
Matt's Place was a greenfield development. I think the point is when you're redeveloping, and this is, I've said this probably till I'm blue in the face and you're tired of me.
Keep going.
The idea, and I've said I'm willing to talk about, I'm not hanging on the Main Street plan because this is an agenda of mine. It's just in place.
Right.
So it's not an agenda of mine, so I caveat that. But the issue is, the idea is everybody knew from the beginning that it was a major chance to redevelop Main Street into that 2008 design. And you had to overcompensate by uses that included the density issues with those uses to hopefully incentivize that somebody is constrained, like the old fire station, that it has the incentive and value and intensity, which involves density, to justify tearing down the building and bring it to the street. You know, my position with the Planning Commission and the City Council is I've seen that temperature change, and those incentives have disappeared. And I think the Main Street plan beginning was a long shot. As a planner, you like the plan. It's not a terrible plan. It's the issue of the community's temperature in wanting to embrace those values. And that temperature has gone to a simmer. And so to me, the likelihood now is even a longer shot to pull off the Main Street plan. And so to me, you're really, what I hear the community, and I repeated it to you, I believe, is that you're really not looking at a Main Street plan. You're really looking at a redevelopment corridor, and we can reformat a new corridor plan that has the quality architecture and get to the temperature level of intensities and types of uses that work for everybody in the community. So that the fire station can go in on Main Street. The decision on whether Shoup can go on Main Street is irrelevant of the design. He's still stuck, if he gets the use change, he's still stuck with the handcuffs of the overlay, and that's an investment he's made. And so we can reformat that so that investment being made has an opportunity to support that business for the long future, rather than just put it in for now, and when I need more, come back and try to amend it again.
So, Corey, please stay. So, Mr. Cook, is he considered non-conforming?
If he's using outdoor storage and equipment, he would be non-conforming. If it's just his corporate offices, he could be defined as a corporate office. So Ascent Construction was in your main and center as a corporate office, but did not include any of their equipment in their storage. And that's where you get the construction sales and service contractor difference in definition.
So in the discussions and the conversations, and I'm hearing various things, originally what I thought I heard was, I think the number was 18 trucks that would come and go, which is a fairly intense use.
I don't know the number of trucks, yeah.
Okay, wouldn't be left there overnight, but they would come and go, fairly intense use. Today, I've kind of heard, well, it's just an office where you're going to meet people. So what is it that excludes Shoup if we don't make this change?
Well, what I've heard, Mr. Shoup, is he has scissor lifts and other equipment that he would store in the apparatus bay of the former station. That would make them either, it's storage of contractor equipment. It's either indoors or out in a yard. And that's what the Planning Commission was wrestling with, and they didn't want it out in the open yard and was fine being in an enclosed building. But that's what separates the differences, is they're bringing their construction equipment along with them. And a scissor lift was explicitly mentioned.
And so are they? Pardon?
So
it wouldn't be outside.
Right, the Planning Commission said as long as it's indoor, that's okay. But that's what makes the difference between a corporate office.
Having those bays and allowing the trucks to go in and out of the bays.
And have your
indoor
equipment and all
in the
that
bays is what
in the
makes the
bays.
difference between an office use and a construction
Correct.
sales and service use.
Correct.
So are they giving up their space that's down in the industrial park?
I don't know, that's up to them.
Are we what, sorry?
Are you giving up your space that's down in the industrial park?
Meaning, when we move out, we giving that up? Yes, we don't even keep our equipment that we have, we don't even keep down at our other office down here in Centerville, just because there's not a lot of room for it in that industrial park. We actually keep it in West Bountiful.
So I have a question, and I know you don't know exactly what Cook does, but now it's a Cook Realty, where he's just meeting with people and he doesn't have any of his equipment there, he would be allowed to be on Main Street.
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
you could
correct?
fall under the corporate office definition of a company.
But is he non-conforming because of the distance from from the sidewalk?
For the overlay portion, yes.
But he's
Okay,
grandfathered.
so we've,
But so he would be allowed there.
If corporate offices would be allowed there, if you come with your office and you want your equipment and
So
so
Shoops
forth.
would be allowed there if they were just using it as an office. It's the fact that they want to put some equipment in there.
Correct. It's a,
that
it's a
makes
storage
them not
yard
okay.
part function that places them in that other category.
But Larson Electric, if they want to remodel or rebuild and have some equipment on site, which I think they store in their garages is my impression, I want to speak for them, but that is a concern. So, but let's, I would suggest the council separate the overlay issues from, is this an acceptable business to have within the zone or not within the zone? This is, many people think we pared down the list too far, and one of them seems like a reasonable request.
I feel like this is important enough, and we just keep getting new information that maybe we should, I hate to table it again, but maybe table it again when we have all of our council members here.
I know it's one that's important to Tammy. I hate to vote on it in her absence.
Well, as far as the tabling goes, we heard about this last time with the special meeting. And what I hate to do is listen to public comment and then suddenly make a decision, because not only does it signal we didn't listen, but we didn't deliberate on what you said, which we have been. But I would prefer more time to deliberate on what we've heard. I think the Main Street overlay issue, Paul, is co-joined. I don't think it's completely separate.
It is, but I don't think it's fair to stop Shoup from making plans while we spend a lot of time on, if the council's going to consider redoing Main Street overlay, that's a big, long project. I would separate this from this specific, is this specific use allowed on Main Street, regardless of what the buildings look like?
Well, part of my trepidation is generally Corey and I are on different ends of the spectrum, but on this one, I'm hearing what he's saying, and I'd like some more time to, put his feet to the fire and see if he can really convince me one way or the other, as well as consider some of the items we've heard. We are getting public comment on this in email. So we do have additional items that are coming in on this. So I would be in favor of tabling, and I'll make the motion that we table ordinance 2017-21 until the next regular city council meeting.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we table the change of use for construction sales and services limited to the next city council meeting, and I assume that means continue to deliberate and receive input on this.
I would say the public comment is, I would argue and say the public comment is.
Not hold another public hearing.
Not another public hearing, because then we'll run into exactly the same issue. We can never tie it off and say we've heard from the public.
But certainly if somebody responds
if somebody emails
in the next day or two, that's fine. I don't want to be in the same position that, because I agree 100% with what George said, even coming out of the budget hearing last week. It's, well, you guys knew what you were going to do anyway. Why did we even come? That's not the case. So I don't want to take information next week and then not be able to vote, because we've already tabled it once. But I would support George's.
So motion on the table to table this item. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Corey? Hey.
Somebody's
Music
regretting
for
it.
you to walk to. That's pretty cool. So the overlay does seem to be problematic. What would be the time frame you would think that we could do something about it? Is that something that has to go back to the Planning Commission and start from scratch? Or could we say from the legislative position, here are the things we like, here are the things we don't, or take the whole thing out, or whatever? What's the process on that?
Well, I think it's, from your standpoint, trying to sit in your shoes, I realize you're balancing some timelines. But, the easiest, I know it's not what everybody wants, but the easiest is to remove the overlay, move forward with the CM, take some time to study the corridor and reformat it. That's the easiest. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's the easiest way.
But then it means certain things could happen that we might otherwise not want to happen during
Correct.
that
And a
period of
much quicker-
reconsideration.
If Tammy were here, she would pounce on you about that comment.
That's why I said it's not maybe the best way. I'm
The
giving open.
Family Dollar developer will be here next week.
Well, you only get
It's a cinder block
10,000.
store.
You only get 10,000, so.
But couldn't we lift it and put some restrictions right back on the same night?
I think
If
that's
we-
pretty tough because you do need, in my view, to engage the process enough with the users again so that they understand. They've been through a lot with the Main Street plan, a lot. And some of it's been negative in their mind, changing their mind, where you're really going, what you're doing. And so I think it would take a little bit of time to at least format a process that engages them again and gain that public trust, buy-in, whatever it is, to understand that we may be moving to a hybrid between the original CM zone and the overlay. And so I do think you're looking at probably a 4 to 6 months to be fair in that process.
And my opinion here is you can separate the discussion of the form-based elements of Main Street from the type of uses that you want. And, does anyone think it's a good idea to have more car dealerships on Main Street or more
Well,
industrial?
that's a little aggressive. If you go back to what just the CM zone today, look at your CM zone uses today. That's what's allowed on Main Street. So to say we're going back to
That's
vehicle.
not what's allowed. Car dealerships are not allowed.
They're not allowed.
Garages are not allowed.
That's not in the overlay, that's just on the.
That's what's,
Yeah, so I'm just saying, the CM zone is already restrictive to some degree. There's tensions with that because some would like to do other uses and others, and that's what you're debating is the construction, sales, and services. But I would say, no, they're tied together because the types of uses you're expecting to be on Main Street are tied to the design that you're going to do.
And that design, from my perspective, that overlay, whatever, or the hybrid, generates the ability for property owners to do renovations and actually improve their property and potentially their value. My personal perspective right now, with the information I have, is the Main Street overlay is damaging to business owners in terms of the value of their properties. And it really handcuffs them, and that concerns me. So I think that they are co-joined as to how much of this we're going to be able to consume between now and the next council meeting. Not a ton, but at least we will have that under consideration.
so the motion on the table is to table this specific item until the first meeting in September. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. You're gonna have to come back again. But we like seeing you. So
We just like having somebody come.
It's nice to have.
I have a concern if we take the overlay, which could take months.
You need
You
to.
want to come to the mic just to?
So my concern is you take that overlay, which could take months to years. I don't know how long that was done originally. Do you remember, Corey? How long it took the?
Took a long time.
It just depends on the investment they want to make with it. Right. I mean, we lose out on opportunities, right? We're looking for, and again, it's us, it's the whole big picture, of course, but we miss out on opportunities when we are trying to do something different in the long term. And for us, if we look at it and say, hey, we're looking at something, the market's good for us right now, business is great, we've got the cash flow to be able to make the purchase, and then, in 6 months' time, that may not be the case. It could be a year, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 5 years.
You may go
whatever
buy
it is.
another building.
Exactly. I mean, we haven't ruled that out. And so there's an opportunity here for us, and I just, my fear is the longer we drag it out, the less appetizing it becomes for us. But, I mean, that is what it is. It's a bigger picture, but, where we're coming from, it's just like, we're a great fit. I don't think we're disrupting Main Street by any means. The new overlay, if that changes, I think we still fit there great. Just something to consider. So.
Is there any way that you could fit in without changing it, where you can have your office and everything there, you just couldn't have your supplies? Would you still be able to maybe do that?
No, it doesn't make sense. So, I mean, and all our supplies are little. It's not like we're dragging a tractor in there every day. It's boxes of material, rolls of wire, things like that that nobody ever sees. It gets locked down. It's too expensive to keep outside. So it's just like a restaurant bringing in food every day, in my opinion. So
What's the size of the trucks that come in?
most of them are vans, 3/4 vans, you know, the covered well, I wouldn't call it a passenger van, but the work vans that you see around. So, and then.
Those are your vehicles. What are the ones that deliver? supplies to you?
They're like box trucks, like flatbed.
Like a 15-foot or an 18-foot?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, you've probably seen Duncan Electric driving around town. You know, they've got the front and then the flatbed, you know, that's open, and then a box truck and things like that. That's the majority of what we see every day, which entrance-wise is awesome to be able to come in from how we sit off of Main Street, can go right in the big parking lot there, park, get out without disrupting Main Street because they'll be coming off of the side street and everything else, and yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
We appreciate your patience. Okay, next up, Corey, I hope this one is straightforward. We have a public hearing on the Parish Creek subdivision final plat.
Mayor, Council, if you remember in the past, this has been the Parish Creek or the Rick Jensen project. This is the north of the Hogan's construction office and our west side. It's kind of the triangular piece between Legacy and I-15. Tom Stewart Construction has purchased the property. If you remember, the PDO for that ground under Rick Jensen expired. They've come back through that process. We re-engaged the PDO. The city approved it. They've been through the Planning Commission on their conceptual and final site plans. They are phasing construction within the development, but they're building the project and its roadway all at once, and then we'll phase the different segments and lots under construction in the project. They've received their final site plan. Everything is to date in compliance with the PDO approval. Now they've gone through the process with the commission to divide the lots. And so we will have a new street that will extend out. If you remember, it's a little bit wider. That's the PDO. It's deeper than what we originally allowed. So we've got 2 lanes going each direction. So it'll be a wider street. And then it's a cul-de-sac, an industrial cul-de-sac subdivision with the various lots. Planning Commission's reviewed the subdivision process, has recommended approval to the City Council. And their hopes is to tag this final site plan and final subdivision as they record to get underway and begin constructing the project.
I had one question for Corey before we go to a public hearing. My recollection is conceptually when we talked about this last time, the street was planned to be constructed with a median. Doesn't necessarily show that on the lot, but is there still plans to have a median, a landscape
Yes.
median in there, even though it's not shown?
Yes, and part of the subdivision process is the CC&Rs to make sure that they will take care of that median area that's within the public right-of-way.
And where is that, where is the median shown or required? Is that in the
It's part of the site plan
part of the
approval.
site plan, which is not coming to us, just the,
Right.
Subdivision.
the plat comes to us, but.
Right, the final plat comes to you, but the site plan terminates at the commission.
Thank you. Other questions for Corey before we hold a public hearing on this? Thank you, Corey. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding the Parish Creek subdivision final plat, which is on the other side next to Legacy Highway? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it to the council.
And the applicant is here if you'd like to hear from them as well.
All right, would the applicant like to speak to us? Anything to comment or say? And we appreciate you coming and hope you'll take questions as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no comment, but unless you have any questions, I'm all ears.
The only question I have is if you receive approval, when does your construction project begin, and phasing, when do you anticipate completing?
As soon as possible. In fact, we are actually proceeding now with plans on the building, and once things proceed with getting utilities in for that road, then with the approval that we've already received on the final site plan, it's ready to go.
Sounds like you got tenants lined up and you're ready to move.
Yep.
That's great news.
For the
Thank you.
for the record, your name for the record?
Oh, Roy.
Roy
Roy Swalberg. Yep, that's me.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the recommendation from the Planning Commission and staff is to approve the final plat.
I would move that we approve the final plat for the Parish Creek subdivision located approximately 1030 North, 950 West.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the final plat for the Parish Creek subdivision. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That looks like it passes unanimously, so you're good to go. Next on our agenda is the reconsideration of zoning map amendment for 640 West Porter Lane. We'll ask Lisa to remind us of the reconsideration process and the restrictions under that.
Yes, thank you. We received a request from the applicant on a recent rezone that was denied by the City Council for the City Council to reconsider your decision. This is essentially a parliamentary procedure, and typically these occur at the same meeting, but Centerville has a broader interpretation of Robert's Rules of Order and allows reconsiderations to come up at the next meeting, or at least if they've requested in a certain time frame. So it's a two-step process. It is a request for reconsideration. We suggest you hear from the applicant so that they can give you their reasons why they'd like you to reconsider your decision. And then a member of the council that voted with the majority must make a motion to reconsider, which basically is saying we'd like to at least talk about this again. And so then there has to be a second on that. And if that motion passes, essentially the matter is back up on the table for you to discuss and consider, and then thereafter make another motion either for or against approving or denying the rezone.
And if the council, after hearing from the applicant, wanted to make different direction, do they have to reconsider it, or they can make a, say, a different, maybe they want the Planning Commission to consider something else? Is that part of the
Well,
reconsideration?
the matter
is
is
separate?
entirely back up on the table, so it's as if you were at your last meeting where you're considering this request for rezone. So, but then you are limited to what the request is and what kind of public noticing we've given, so I'm not sure what sort of option you're thinking of.
We can't remand to the Planning Commission to say, look at residential low because of the denial. Like, is that kind of where you're going on that? Or?
Well, if you want to go residential low, typically on applicant applications, usually they want an up or down.
Right, and that's why I was saying, like,
so,
that level of a move would represent something that's unnoticed.
So maybe can we hear from the applicant?
Yeah, let's hear from the applicant.
What they want, and then get some guidance from Lisa on what you can and can't do.
Now, you'll recall, we did have the Bowling rezone where it came back to you and the applicant came and said, okay, I don't want RH, I just want RM, and you were able to do that. So, yes, if the applicant wants to go to RL, they could request that because it's encompassed within the zoning realm, but we'll hear from the applicant.
Let's hear from Mr. Bell.
Dave Bell. I came, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago, spoke to you, said, you know, I got the property, want to do something with it. I didn't come because after talking to Corey and, you know, I didn't speak to Lisa originally, but, you know, it was like, well, it was a no-brainer. And that's what I get for thinking it was a no-brainer. I really genuinely, I thought, okay, I'm basically, I'm even closer to high. Remember, the west side of that property is all high commercial. The east side of that property is residential medium. Go figure, I did something really crazy. I asked for the same thing that you gave to the guy next door to me less than a year ago. So I was really shocked when James came back and said no, because it's zoned agricultural right now, which means, and I got 200 animal units, which means 8 pigs. And I don't think the residents next to me want 8 pigs on there, although it's just a little fence and I can do that. And I've got to do something because that big old white house back there, it's just an eyesore. And I had renters in there, and over the years, it's the quality of the renters has gotten worse and worse. It's off the street. I'm just going to be honest with you. You don't want the people that come to look at that place in there. I don't want them in there. So it's empty right now. So this reconsideration, you know, I am going to ask you to reconsider this. I spoke to 4 of you on the phone. I was open about that when I spoke to you, that I'd spoken to the other people. I enjoyed our conversations. I thought they had merit. I got from that, and I'll speak to that now, that it seems like your toolbox, I use it because y'all, you know, I'm a mechanic, and it seems to me like your toolbox is lacking some drill bits, you know, for the right size hole that you're trying to punch there. And I get that. I still buy equipment and tools like I thought, once I own that, I don't need to buy anything else. Well, apparently that's not the way it is, and either for the city. With that being said, this kind of a straw poll that I took is that you all would like to see that restrained to 6 units an acre down there, because you didn't think that with the conditional use, which I understand, Lisa, you tell me if I'm going to be wrong when I say this, is if you grant me the RM, give me the conditional use, it's all bets are off. I can't stand here and say, I want, and this is what I think is fair. I'll tell you what I think is fair if you're interested. I think that you say 6 because you got some saber rattlers, and they're the same people that come in here with a blowtorch and say, oh my gosh, another, what are we going to do now? We don't do that. We got to do single family homes. I can't imagine anybody in this room really thinks that's a single family home lot. We got to do something with it. I can back up my business and I can put more commercial back there, but then I'll come in here and I'll be saying, okay, conditional use, I'm going to do an impound yard, and I don't want to do that. I really thought after, and I saw that, I've heard some comments that that the streets are a little narrow on the Porter Walton townhomes, the Brighton homes, whatever that's called, just east of me. Now, if you go look at it, because they're just finishing up the last building, when the construction things were on there, you couldn't drive around that thing. You could not make that loop around there when they had construction trucks in there. But they're just about done, and I drive by there more than anybody in here because that's the way I come when I drive to work in the morning. And every morning I'm looking in and looking and seeing what's going on. And it looks pretty good to me. And as me and my wife get older, that's the kind of place I would want to move to, because I don't want to mow no lawn no more. And I don't want to, all my kids, 2 of them are working in the business down there on the frontage road. And I got grandkids now, and this is the best time of my life. And so I think of places like that, and I can't be the only person that's getting old and, and thinking, I'd like to have a nice little place like that. I don't need a big old wide street. I'm not going to be there all that much, I'm about sick of the winters around here. But, so here's my proposal. This is what I'm asking you to do. I know there's going to be people that are going, my gosh, what you didn't give them single family. You came in here and yelled for single family homes. And you keep doing single family homes, and you're going to make the car repair places a lot more money, because people are going to spread out all over the place. We're all breeding. We're not going to stop doing that, and it doesn't work. And these dang millennials, that's why the storage units are so up. They don't want big houses. They want these little places. That's what my kids want. My kids want what I'm hoping to build there. So, he did 8 units over there. Give me 7. Give me 7 units an acre. I'll do a nice project. I'll call it Dave's something. No, I won't do that to you. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that.
Dave's Car Repair Apartment.
No. It'll be a little classier than that.
Fronted with a little couple palm trees.
It was I got it, thanks. Lisa, you said you wouldn't do this. But listen, there's got to be a way that you guys can do this right now. Or I do the work that we talked about. I'm going to go into my machine shop, and I'm going to say they need this 3/32 drill bit, because that 1/4 inch and that 1/2 inch, they're just not working. And so we're going to come back and say, okay, I want RM on there, and you guys, we're going to build a tool for you with Lisa's help. And Corey, we're going to say RM RM4, RM5, RM6, RM7, RM8. If you can't give me 7 now, I'm happy to do that for this city. I remember when y'all didn't want me out on it. You wouldn't even remember this because y'all were, but back in 1992, bless their hearts, people did not want me in the corridor of the city because they thought he's going to just be a crap hole out there. I hope that I've proven that that's not what I've been. So that's my asking. I'm asking you to reconsider and give me 7 units an acre. And I promise you, my word should mean something to this council. I've been here in this city for a long time. I swear to you, if you give me 7, I'm not going to put up 8. I won't do that. I heard from people that they said, people have done that. This is Dave Bell. I swear to you, it'll be 7 units an acre. And it'll be a nice thing. It'll be something my family can be proud of because I started out in the city as a mechanic and I've done really well with my hard work and my word. So that's what I'm asking you.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate you coming and speaking to us.
Should I sit down or any questions?
Any questions for Dave or questions for Lisa on options?
Well, the way I understand it is that I can only use the tools that are already in the box. And I can't invent a tool on the spot unless it's already been put in the toolbox. So when you come for a request for reconsideration, my only options are RM, which means 8, or not.
Is that true, Lisa? Do we have some type of tool?
Well, the tool we don't have, when we are granting a rezone, we do not add conditions unless we're using a different tool in our toolbox, like a PDO or other options or a special district. So those are some options. But you could grant the RM. He still has to go get a conditional use permit and show that he can put that many on there, and just take his word that he won't request all the way up to the 8.
But that's everything we've been trained against, including what you've trained us to do, that we're supposed to only do what we're comfortable with and not zone something hoping that we get what we want.
And then we have to do it the same for everybody.
Yeah, and
if
then my
somebody
other
else
concern
comes and
is the next
says, "We
person that
promise,"
comes
we have to
in.
believe
I mean,
them.
Balling came in and made us a promise, and we were told by staff not to be taking promises, so we made him,
Yeah,
come
I
up
can't
with
tell you
it.
that taking his word, yeah, there's no legal basis in that. Hopefully what I'm training you is to not rezone with what you're comfortable with, but rezone with what's in the general plan and what makes sense from a zoning standpoint.
Right, so I would rather see him help us get some tools, but I'd like to see the tools come as fast as we can get them through. I'd like to direct staff to get working on those tools.
So maybe Corey or Lisa can comment on that. You have a couple of options. One option we've discussed before, but was this council decided not to do that, is lower the minimum size of a PDO. A PDO lets you negotiate very specific things. So you could either lower the size of a PDO. I can't remember how big the property is. 2 acres.
2 acres.
Right now, our minimum is 5 acres, and we talked about doing this before, but decided against it.
But I don't think we want to do that.
Or you
either.
can decide to ask for other zoning options if you want to go there.
Be careful with the PDO because the PDO is built on density bonuses. So you got to be careful with that. So, I think the ways you really look at it is your decision, I guess you're still in the decision of reconsidering, right? And we haven't gone to that level. So it's your decision tonight is whether you reconsider and whether you would entertain the medium zone under existing toolbox that you have. The other option is the council can direct staff and create a narrow place that you want to amend, because I think that if you're responding to one person, that needs to be narrow, because I still think that multifamily is a temperature issue that's still very sensitive, whether it's 6, 7, 8, 4, 5. And I still think that you will have feedback on that. And so, how narrow do you want to be, and how narrow do you as a council want to commit to staff and say, just study a 7, just study a 6? Because I think you have, my impression is you have larger issues than just that. And so, my thoughts is that the applicant be the driver for a specific, and then staff can decide and recommend how to add to or subtract to that. And we use the term granulation. I think you coined it.
I was just reinterpreting Robin. She had the R2, 4, 5, whatever. So,
Yeah.
granulation is part of it. So, Lisa, let me ask you a quick question. So, just a legal hypothetical that hasn't happened. We take Mr. Bell at his word, and the next developer who comes in with agricultural low, who makes exactly the same request, says, I'm going to commit to you verbally that I'm going to do 7, and we say no. Aren't we guilty of being capricious in our decision process at that point? Or at least that's arguable by the next developer?
Well, and that's why I'm saying on a rezone decision, I would like you to look at the factors in the ordinance, which is looking to your general plan, determining if the facilities are adequate. We're really not making a decision on someone's word. That's your option, but I would prefer for you to look at the factors and see if this is a legitimate use of RM when it's bounded by commercial high and RM.
Right, and the reason I'm asking that question specifically is I don't want you to feel in any way your character is being impugned. I just looking at the next guy down the road is going to say, you did it for him, you didn't do it for me, you've been capricious, and I'm going to sue the city over capricious zoning. And that would be my concern, is that if we're not consistent in being bound by the ordinances and the tools we have, then the next guy has a wedge to come in and beat the city over the head. And the thing is they could say, yeah, I'm going to do 7, and they come in and build to the maximum extent of residential medium. We have no legal footing. They could win that from my perspective.
Well, that's correct. That could happen.
Yeah.
Just a question, I can't sign a document?
No, it has no, as far as I'm concerned, Lisa, it
just-
doesn't have any bearing on what the ordinance says today.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And we already just turned down Bowling for the same thing. He stood right there and promised, and we turned him down for the same reason. And so kind of hate to, how do we explain to him?
I thought I'd ask. I kind of, Lisa and Corey, they told me that, but I thought I'd give it a shot. So in closing, not to take up any more of your time, can I, what I don't want to do, I don't want to waste a lot of time, yours and mine, and this man's with, it costs money to do drawings and stuff. This stuff isn't free. If we give you these tools, you feel comfortable that you'll have what you need so that we can get a nice project in there? See how I kept that kind of like ambiguous and open? I mean, y'all know what I'm after.
Right.
I made it clear.
If the tools for granularity were there, it's a much easier process, because then we're not capricious, we're not treating people individually different, and then I can look another developer in the eye who's demanding what you got and say, yeah, you fit into the R2, R4, R6, whatever that is, you can go for that. But it just becomes really problematic. As I kind of opened up this evening, it's really hard to balance out all these rights together and still maintain harmony. And I think if we're fair and just with everyone across the board with whatever tools are necessary, we could do something. We just right now, I just don't feel that we have the right tools. And it sounds like Corey is signing up to that process to work on that and to help us get that, because we'd love to have them. Because we have a lot of these small patchwork properties in town that have exactly the same issue, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll stay on Corey. I love to bug him, so I'll work really hard to keep him going on this.
I'll bug him too.
Good.
I guess that's it.
All right, thank you so much for
And-
coming back.
And we do apologize for not listening to your very impassioned plea.
No, you didn't
You
listen.
make a tremendous argument. It's just, some of us have been through this situation recently, and we know what we're bound by.
No, I didn't feel anybody.
Okay.
I understand totally. I run a business. You got to do it. You got to cover your butt.
And the palm tree comment was totally in jest. Okay, just making sure.
I like the palm trees.
I spoke for the trees.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Just for clarity, I think legally, or your agenda, the request for reconsideration, you have to decide on that. Assuming we're past that, directive to staff, is this an applicant-driven process, or is the council by majority needs to make a motion to direct staff?
I was going to make a motion that I would move that we reject the motion for reconsideration of...
So we just don't take up the motion, right?
Right.
We just don't take it up
Okay.
at all.
All right.
So I don't think we need a motion for that, do we?
No, but if you have any direction for staff, you need a motion.
But I would make a motion that we direct staff to vigorously pursue. Others would say 5, 6, or 7. I would say 6 or 7. But a combination of those to give us the ability to have other options in the development process.
I'd like 5 too, because I think we'll have other projects that maybe 5 will fit and 6 won't. Well, let's get all the tools in the box.
As many step granularity that makes sense without going crazy. I kept saying 2 just because, I mean, it depends. I'd like to have, I don't think that would come up very often, but it's better to have more of these than less.
It is good. So there's a motion. Is there a second on that? I think my only concern is when you think across all the property that you have and all the people that will come and ask for their property to rezone, if you have, you're going to rezone one person's 5, one person's 6, one person's 7, and somebody else is still RM8. How are you going to justify that fairness? It's going to be a challenge.
That's where I'm looking to my trained professional to give me the justification for why each zone and the criteria would exist. Yeah, I think it's a fair point, but look into that person right there to develop those tools.
So we have a motion to ask staff to...
Is R5 added to the motion?
Yeah.
Yes. I said I wouldn't, but there's others who would, so our 5, 6, or 7.
4 as well.
We are.
Okay, 4.
I know we do, but we don't, okay, never mind. That's a different way of looking at it.
So to restate, the motion is to ask staff to...
I would ask, George, you really want our 4 on there?
No. We have it. I was just saying consistency-wise, it would look a little different between residential low, R4, 5, 6. Just trying to standardize so when somebody looked at it, but you get what I'm going at. It's semantics, really, so it doesn't need to be on there.
So all those in favor of asking staff to come back with additional tools for R5, R6, R7 type concept zoning. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
He's got it half done already.
All right. Next up is an exciting item, our Centerville fee schedule. Lisa, you're on again. This is something you and Spencer have been working on for a long time.
Yes.
Substantial piece of work.
It has been. So I appreciate the council approving the hiring of an intern this summer, Spencer Garn, and he's done quite a bit of work. He's done a few small projects for me, as well as this larger project working on the fee schedule. So it was a big project, and we did a lot of research and have put that up on the internet, but on our website. But I just wanted to introduce Spencer. He is going to start school, his 3rd year of law school, in a couple weeks. And between now and then, his wife is expecting their 3rd daughter. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's been a great intern and done a lot of great work. So I'd like him to have the opportunity to present this to you. So Jake, if you can put up his PowerPoint and introduce Spencer Garn.
Great.
All right, Mayor, Council, I'd like to thank you for, first off, for giving me this opportunity to work for Centerville City this summer and to work with Lisa. It's been a really great opportunity for me to work with Lisa. She's been a great mentor for me, and to see her work product and the commitment that she has to excellent legal work has been really good for me as I start my legal career to see that. So I'd like to start by explaining why we started this research project. So there's basically three reasons. We wanted to identify any missing or obsolete fees from the fee schedule, and we found several missing fees and then a handful of fees that the city doesn't charge but that were listed on the fee schedule. We wanted to evaluate whether the fees that are on the fee schedule are authorized by state law. And then finally, we wanted to improve the organization of the fee schedule and improve the transparency and accessibility of the fee schedule for residents. Let's see. So that led to several changes. There were some substantive changes we added. As I mentioned, we added several fees that were in the municipal code or the zoning code, but that didn't turn up in the fee schedule. We eliminated a few fees that were not charged, as I said, and we readjusted fee amounts where they were either too low or too high. For example, the bicycle license fee didn't recoup the cost of issuing that license, so that fee was adjusted upward slightly. And there were a couple fees that were not clearly in compliance with state law, like the bicycle license fee, just the bicycle, not the bicycle license fee, but the home occupation fee was not clearly in compliance because the way the fee schedule was written, it looked like you could charge a fee for home occupations, but it turns out you can only do that in limited situations. So Lisa fixed that, so that's not a problem anymore. And then Lisa reorganized the fee schedule online and made it. I'll talk more about that as I move on with this presentation. Okay, so this is just a basic overview of the process that we undertook to update the fee schedule. The first thing we did was we reviewed the municipal code and looked for any reference to fees or fee schedule, and we made a master list of those fees. And then we cross-referenced that master list to make sure that if it was in the fee schedule or the zoning code, that it was also in the fee schedule. And that's how we found the missing fees. We also just generally looked at the organization of the fee schedule and decided whether it made sense and fixed the order where that made sense and found duplicates in the fee schedule. There are a few fees that were listed in 2 or 3 places, and so we fixed that. And then finally, we did legal research to make sure that all the fees that are in the schedule are justifiable, that state law authorizes them. There we go. So some findings from the research that we did on when fees are authorized. Basically, there were a lot of fees that were explicitly authorized by state code, but there were a few that weren't. But even though there's not an express authorization for some of those fees, we found that they were still authorized by the general grant of authority to the general welfare clause and some other statutes that make it clear that those fees can still be charged. Some other findings, fees can't exceed the reasonable cost of the service that's provided. Basically, they can only reimburse the city for whatever service the city is providing. There's only a handful that can be revenue raising, like if the city had a parking garage, you can raise revenue for that, or sales tax can be revenue raising, and they have to be uniformly applied on all that are charged the fee. So this is just an overview of what we found when we researched fees in the fee schedule. There were 193 references to fee and 63 references to fee schedule in the code, and then you the municipal code, and then you see the zoning code just below that. So we made, well, I've already explained this, we made a master list of those fees and cross-reference those fees. And what did we find in that process? There's a list of missing fees there at the top. I'd just like to highlight a couple of those. There were no fees, although it was listed in the municipal code that beer establishments or alcoholic establishments, when they're every year they have to renew their business license, but there was no fee for that in the fee schedule, so we added that to the fee schedule. There's also now a fee for firework permits and temporary noise permits. There were some corrections. I already explained the home occupations, and there are a few fees that the city just doesn't charge, like the credit card fee, a transaction fee. It wasn't being charged, and so we removed that fee from the fee schedule. And then Lisa transferred the fee schedule to an online format, and it's alphabetical. And I think we have, I think Jacob is going to pull up a.
So you see now we have our municipal code, our zoning code, and then our third project, which is the fee schedule. So it's the exact same platform as our municipal code, just slightly different on the numbering, and you'll see we just did it topic oriented. Spencer had looked at a number of different, probably looked at 10 different cities' fee schedules and how they organize them, and how we would like to search them. And we just decided to go topic oriented and then alphabetical.
There was one issue I noticed on the linking. So if you tried to hit the hyperlink from the PDF document, it would take you to a print preview version on the municipal code side. So I couldn't jump to the right sections that I was in.
Oh, correct. On the PDF, anything that was underlined, it's actually not a hyperlink. It was just showing that that was new.
Right.
Any underlining is new, and then the strikeout, that's the only optional red line and strikeout. But in the fee schedule, MCO that hosts this actually recommended that we not hyperlink those because they're just so time consuming to keep them correct. We could. So you'll recall in our municipal code, that was the request is, hey, when we cite something, can we hyperlink it? We can, but we haven't done that yet. So we thought we'd make sure that we have all, I mean, right now on all of these codes, we're still just making sure we have the right reference, and then eventually we can hyperlink those if it would be user-friendly.
Oh, I got to the information eventually. I was like, oh man, I have to think about this.
Yeah, you have to go to the thing, or you could just search.
Right.
But yes, that would be nice eventually. And maybe we could start with the fee schedule since it's such a small document and see how that goes, because most of these should be static addresses.
And I really like that the schedule is now searchable on municipal code online. So I feel like the online format is just a lot more user friendly and easier. It's easier to find fees now. Some other reviews that we did, or did you want to look through? Some other reviews that we did. A reasonable, just a basic kind of a smell test on all the fees to make sure that they weren't unreasonable or excessive. We didn't do a real detailed analysis of that, but that might be something for maybe a future intern or project. We also, Lisa contacted all the department heads and made sure that if we were charging a fee or if it was in the fee schedule, that it was actually being used or charged. So the recommendation for the City Council is that we approve the transfer to the new online format and also any amendments that have been made to the fee schedule. Are there any questions about this project?
I think it's great. I do have one fee that I would like my fellow council members to consider removing, and I don't know if this is the time or if that needs to come up in a separate meeting and be noticed.
Is it approval with an amendment allowed?
Well, let's go to the fee schedule if you could, Jake, and we'll do a keyword search and get to the section you're talking about.
It's very easy because it's in section 2. It's right at the top.
Oh, well, what's the keyword for Jake to?
Chickens?
Animal.
Animal? Animal, okay.
I think there's a
Should we
chapter
go to
on
that
that.
one? Yeah, that's,
Dogs.
let me see.
Chapter 2.
Chapter, let me get there too.
I noticed that under animal, the dog licensing, we have removed from the city, since we're having Davis County Animal Control be the ones that we kind of defer to, other than an administrative fee if it applies. So my question is, on our chicken licensing, we have an initial permit fee that includes a site review of where you're going to be placing your coop. So I can understand an initial fee, but I don't see that there's any value or purpose in the annual renewal. I know as a chicken owner and as a permit holder, it is a major hassle for them because it's an annual renewal, but it's not an annual on the calendar. It's from when you applied for your permit. So they're trying to track every person's permit and send out a renewal notice and then a reminder renewal notice. And I can see the need to recoup that, but if we just said, we're not going to have an annual renewal, what would it hurt us?
Well, a couple comments. It'd be great just to do that on a calendar year. That sounds really easy to try and convert that. Second, that might be one that you want to take back to the group, because I do know that this has a corresponding section in the zoning code, which is where we adopted the new raising chickens and rabbits. So there might be some other issues that community development might want to weigh in on what they do and why they want that annual renewal fee. So I would probably suggest not repealing that as part of this, but having a conversation
On it. Okay.
So in that same vein of fee schedules, at least what it looked like from the analysis is that there was no problem with resident, non-resident fees for park pavilions. That's at least what I read from the analysis. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the difference between?
So use of a park pavilion rental, there was a resident price, and then there was a non-resident price for the use of that facility.
Yeah, so Lisa's probably the best one to answer this, but I think we did talk about that, and
it's got a yellow on it, so.
Yeah, so Spencer had raised some of these issues about, wait a minute, can you treat people differently? And there are certain situations where we probably want our fees uniform, but this one goes to the basis that Centerville residents are the taxpayers and they're taking care of the parks, and so I think there's a legitimate distinction there. A lot of the other thing is the incentive, as Bruce Cox, our Parks Director, will say, that you have to keep up with the neighboring parks because they do the same thing, and there's a lot of, incentive to park shop on certain things. So it's a legitimate.
My recollection is this was kind of a technical challenge when they first did the park reservation system. There was no way to differentiate the person putting in the credit card was a citizen or not, other than, I guess you could make up an address in the city. I know that I reserved it once this summer, and it's just an honesty system.
There's probably a little name recognition that went along with that.
But
we do the same thing with a cemetery. We have resident and non-resident.
But you have to come in, and I think the difference is you have to come in and do a cemetery plot in the office. You can't do that online. The park reservation system is 100% online, and so I think that's why, right or wrong, that was kind of the history.
So can't we just have an attestation clause that says I'm registering as a resident under,
You probably could.
some little nice little one
Pay
blurb.
$5 extra if you're a non-resident.
Well, and that's where I'm looking at Salt Lake's schedule, and this is really down to, thanks for that clarification. The sports field use in other cities is based on a number of criteria: profit, nonprofit, resident, non-resident. And our fee schedule is just, here's the per game price.
I thought Bruce was changing that.
So I didn't see that in there.
It's being doubled, I believe, but there's no distinction, resident or non-resident.
Right, the field use has doubled from a whopping $5 to $10
Right.
a game. And also, so I went through all these fees with Bruce Cox, and we went through the field light fee, that needed to be increased as well. And the baseball field preparation fee went up $5. But again, a lot of these are balancing. I will say, as Spencer mentioned, we did not do an analysis of every single fee and what it should be. And I was hoping that that would be part of this, but this took so long that, as we've said, is the next intern's project. But
it's extensive research. I mean, I read through every note, and there's a lot there. So
that's
thank
great,
you.
yeah. But I think overall, our fees are very low, and that's because Centerville wants that balance of allowing the citizens to use our parks when they, when they can for a reasonable price. And so on most of these, we're not recouping our costs other than on the zoning applications and those types of things where we have engineering fees, but we have pretty low fees overall.
Well, I telegraphed at an earlier meeting that with these very expensive soccer fields coming in and profit and nonprofit, I see it as a net loss to the taxpayer if there isn't some sort of offset for nonprofit resident versus for-profit external getting our fields.
Can you think of any for-profit entity that would ever use a field?
Forza.
I think they're organized as a nonprofit.
Maybe RSL.
Oh, RSL would be one, yeah.
RSL could be one.
I don't think that's likely.
Well, if they do their own junior,
RSL has
junior
approached
program.
us?
Their junior program.
Oh.
They're not organized as a nonprofit. That's not legitimate. Maybe some of them aren't. I think most of those are.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think at least it's differentiated because I think the fee schedule is not intended to even in Salt Lake to be punitive. It's simply we're giving preferential treatment to our residents first, and then based on availability or the ability to offset the price, we'll let other. In fact, Salt Lakes actually has they have a formula for their reservation that says how the scheduling works. It's included in their fee schedule. It says nonprofit youth, 75% residents. That's the priority schedule that goes along with it. And if we redo the fee schedule, and especially with the soccer fields and whatever Bruce calculates to be the price associated with those, I'd love to see the fee schedule also include the priority matrix so people know what they're up against.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. As with the municipal code, I mean, I know there's a lot of new fees here just because they were mentioned in our code, and I think we should put them in the fee schedule, but the attempt here is to get this online. I didn't want to make a lot of major substantive decisions like the field use, but I think that that's something we should put on our list as amendment. We'll put the chicken issue on, as well as Steve has requested that we repeal our fire impact fees, and I said I'd prefer to take even that one as a separate issue, because remember, on this MCO, we can track the legislative history of every fee schedule amendment. And for instance, on the fire impact fees, I'd like to have that legislative history of when we repealed it, and some of that, rather than just losing it in a massive update.
Rewrite.
Now, Lisa, you didn't tell them why I recommended that. Recommended we remove ours because the fire district will be imposing one district-wide.
Oh, yeah, I figured.
which will happen, but it hasn't. Still have another month before that kicks in.
Well, right.
Well, there's a 90-day waiting period, so we'll find out.
It's sometime in September, I believe,
Yeah.
the 90 days.
So what's the recommended process here? We've got this great thing that we put up on. It's already online, right? It's available.
It is. Interestingly, I went ahead, since we did MCO, they have added this, you can make it public or private just by clicking a button. And I decided to put this up with that one notice at the very beginning so everybody can see it. But once it's approved, I go in and I'll take it offline while I clean it up. We take out all the underlining and all the strikeout, and then it's good to go.
Well, I have no heartburn bringing it online. I mean, looking through it, there was not a lot that caused me grief. I think the issue you brought up, Stephanie, and the park fee schedule, we're reaching end of season, so the criticality of solving that problem in the next couple of weeks isn't there. But before we hit the next recreation season where we allow scheduling, I think we should have that nailed down and in there with both the changes in fees and the priority scheduling.
It's a great place because Bruce has a priority of scheduling. It's just not well published, and this seems like an easy place to publish it.
Right.
Yeah,
right
and you'll
below the
notice,
fees.
I went ahead on the, for instance, on the subdrain, our fee schedule referenced a credit policy, but it took about 2 weeks to get a copy of that because nobody knew where it was. So I just went ahead and put that whole credit policy in here and the map. So yeah, I think that would be great if there's other documents that can just be added, we'll have them all in one place. And
It might get a little confuzzled, but at least, I mean, people are only going to look at this in sections anyway, so.
Right.
If it's a page or two of additional data relative to their fee schedule they're interested in paying,
I think that'll be beneficial.
one stop is always better.
so some follow-up items, the park priority and nonprofit resident, non-resident issue, the chicken fee, and then the fire impact fees. Any other fees that just annoy people, or a fee that you would like?
If there was some that were marked red, does that mean you were recommending taking them out? Like the late return of key fee?
No, the red, I believe it was in the ordinance, but not in the fee schedule.
Oh, because I interpreted that was one that wasn't going to fly legally. Was the
Oh,
original
sorry.
interpreted
No,
that.
so this was more of, well, let's see.
Spencer, what's your color coding here?
Yeah, so they're kind of.
Could you come up to the mic? Could you come up to the mic? There may be a viewing public.
Yeah, so that chart is kind of two different things. It's the analysis of each fee and whether it's legal. And then also the color coding, it reflects whether it's actually in the fee schedule or not.
Okay.
So where it was coded red.
Oh yeah, I found, here it is.
Right,
The green is fees that appear both in the ordinance and the fee schedule, so we're good with those. Yellow were fees that did not clearly appear in the ordinance or the fee schedule, so it was ambiguous. Red, they were in the ordinance but missing from the fee schedule. And then the blue, I went back afterwards and said, well, I'd also like you to find all the fees in the fee schedule that are not in the ordinance, and so those are the blue. But again, as the research supported, you don't have to have the reference in the ordinance as long as we adopt the fee schedule by resolution.
Well, I would move that we adopt Resolution 2017-18.
I got some, can we slow down a little bit?
Well, we can still debate.
So a motion to adopt it, do we have a second before we discuss it?
Second.
Moved and seconded, let's discuss.
On page, I don't usually go into detail.
Okay, good.
But this
Give
time
us
I did.
this section maybe.
Bill, it involves numbers and you say you don't go into detail? I'll
On
believe that for a
page
minute.
32, where it has copying costs.
Okay,
Black
so-
and white copy is 20 cents and a color copy is 2.5 cents. I suspect that is a typo since a two-sided color is 50 cents.
Okay, which, single-sided black is 20 cents, double-sided black and white is 35 cents.
Color, single-sided,
It's 25, yeah, what's?
.025.
0.025.
Oh, .025, there we go. See, I didn't even see it. Okay, yes,
Shoot, I was
let's
gonna
fix
bring all my
that.
pictures down.
I need new glasses. Okay, yes, that is a good catch. Oh, I love it.
so-
We actually just put that in there to see if anybody would.
So I'm going to amend my motion to adopt it with the change to the copy price.
No, I got several other
You got
questions.
more of those?
Yeah, no, not more of those. My others are questions. What is a protection strip on page 46?
Okay, protection strips, that'll be in the subdivision fee. So protection strips, we rarely do those, but generally, if a developer is coming in and he owns all of one side of the development, let's say he doesn't own the other side of the street, but you're required to put in the entire street, and one developer has to pay for all of that, even though the guy on the other side is benefiting, we can allow them to put a protection strip, which is no more than 10 feet, it's usually like 1 foot, that they put, and so when the property that didn't contribute to the road, if they build or want a building permit within the next 10 years, they actually have to purchase that protection strip, which pays for their fair share of all those improvements.
Okay.
So
What
it's
is
literally the tape line down the middle of the room.
What is a cut permit?
And is that in the excavation? So if they want to actually cut into the asphalt, that's what Randy calls it, it's an open cut permit, so you're allowed to cut into the roadway.
In my view, that is entirely, I think it was $35, that is entirely inadequate, because that's where our roads get hit the worst, is in those cuts.
Yeah, it probably is part of the excavation, I would think you'd have to have the,
That's not intended to cover the cost of the
That's just the
repair.
administrative
That's just the
portion, right?
administrative. They're required to repair it and post a bond or have a bond on file with the city to guarantee the proper repair of the cut. So the $35 is simply
It's just a filing fee?
administrative fee.
Well, we really need to, in my view, watch those more closely, because that is where our streets go downhill fastest.
Yeah, now, you do raise a good
Yeah.
question, though. I can't answer for sure. Is there an inspection fee in addition to the 35?
Well, I think generally they have to get, first of all, the excavation permit, which allows them
Yeah,
to do work
yeah.
in the right-of-way. So anytime somebody wants to do work in our right-of-way, they first have to get the excavation permit, which is $35 per 100 lineal feet of work. So that can add up. And then, did you ask about an inspection fee?
Well, I'm raising the question whether there's a fee in addition.
I didn't see one in there under.
So that might be,
section.
that's a good question. We can take that back and ask.
There's a hard surfacing inspection deposit of 200, but.
Oh, there we go. Yes, hard surfacing. So yeah, if they,
So that deposit would be applied, I don't know what the details are on that, but I'm assuming, Lisa, that would be pay towards the inspection of those cuts, the repair of those cuts.
right, so they
And
go out
depending
and
on
check
how
and
many
make
times
sure.
they got to go back, it perhaps is how much they
Yeah.
take out of that.
And I think that's just ensuring that the work was done adequately, so they go out, and if it wasn't, at least we have the $200 deposit.
Yeah, the problem is, though, the work looks adequate at the beginning, and then next spring, it shows up as not having.
What
been
is the
adequate.
warranty?
Well, I
period?
think there's a one-year warranty on those. We do go out and look at them. In our operational metrics system, we actually report the number of failures that occurred on last year's cut or patches. So they do have a procedure of Public Works of going out and looking at it within that warranty period.
But we're not recouping anything for the warranty inspection. That's just,
I don't know the answer to
well,
that.
it
Probably
doesn't seem
not.
like it's covered in this.
Apparently not. Perhaps not.
My next question, and Steve mentioned that the fire is going to be moving, but the fire impact fees, and I didn't put my page number down, I apologize.
So that's chapter 12, section
Would appear to be
12.040.
woefully inadequate. I mean, the fire chief came in, he made a big presentation to us about multi-story access and so forth, and there's basically no difference between single stories, multi-story.
Oh, in our current assessment.
In the
What's-
current assessment, and now if it's all moving to them, then that takes it out of
Yeah, what's-
our purview, but those would appear to be totally inadequate.
Yeah, so the fire district has, anytime you enact an impact fee under state law, you have to have a number of public hearings, and you have to do an impact fee analysis and your study, and remember, we put those in the libraries, and so the fire district has conducted those studies and have come up with their recommended fees. My understanding is they've already adopted their new fire impact fees, and they will be charging those directly rather than the cities, which I think is the better route. We were collecting them for them, and all the cities adopted the exact same fire impact fee. So now all the cities will be repealing our fire impact fee the day that the fire district's fees go into effect, and they will be charging those directly.
Okay. And then my last comment is with regard to the park fees, storm drain fees, and water fees. Have we looked at those recently? We had a major increase in water fees and in storm drain and subdrain in the last year. Probably would be difficult for me to defend the statement that part of the need for those increases were that the fees being charged were inadequate historically.
Are you talking about the impact fees or the culinary water rate fees?
I'm talking about the storm drain fees and the culinary water fees.
Okay, so the service
both of which have
fees.
increased in the last year
Well,
generally.
Well, let me clarify something. You can't use impact fees to repair or replace something that's already there. You can only use them for new infrastructure related to growth. So the drainage utility fees that were increased dramatically 2 years ago were based on a 10-year plan of $6 million of replacing pretty much entirely. That $6 million plan was replacing culverts, existing drainage pipe, subdrain and storm drain.
But one of the things that we put in was a new drain under the freeway, and that's new.
Yes, and that is being, the impact fees are being used, were applied towards that.
On a prorated basis.
Yeah, that was a cost-shared project. UDOT put money in, the city put money in, the developer put money in, and the city's portion of that is an eligible impact fee expense.
But I guess my question is when was the last time we looked at our impact fees, and do we believe that they are high enough?
It was in the last 5 years.
Well, all three of those have been, the water, the drainage, and the park have been reviewed within the last 5 years.
But it's a good thing to look at them more often. I mean, we have to use those fees within 6 years, so the recommendation is to at least look at them every couple of years or 3 years, so it should be getting back on our radar.
I would tell you, I would recommend that you not just make some assumptions that every fee, each of those fees needs to be reviewed every so many years, because, for example, when we reviewed the drainage fees, there weren't that many projects that could be actually justified for impact fees. There hasn't been much land developed to which those fees apply. And doing a fee update is $10,000, you know, so 10 to 20,000, depending on the complexity of it. So I think after 5 years, yeah, you should maybe ask the question, do we need to do it? But I just wouldn't automatically do it because it's been 5 years. The park fees were what year, Jake, do you remember?
2012.
Well, they've all been since 2012.
I'm just asking the question. It may not be a fair assumption, but I am concerned that some of the things that we've had to increase are because we didn't collect enough on the front end and do a good enough job on the front end. And I'm not trying to throw stones when I say that. It is a concern.
Well, in response, since I was involved in those studies, I think that the increases really have been primarily to replace existing infrastructure. The water fees, for example, the three-step water fee increase is tied back to a long-term plan that we reviewed with the council when they agreed to make those increases. And it really isn't to fund new lines that serve growth. The one under the freeway, for example, that was just recently completed this year, the new water line bore under the freeway, was a impact fee project.
Fair questions. Anything else on your list?
No, I got all of them.
I have one, or maybe it's more than one. I'm under 19.020 culinary water rates on page 51. It looks like what I'm looking at is the change in the rates over 3 years, June 26 of 16 and then 17 and then 18. And 16 has been crossed out, but 17 and 18 are both looking like they're there and the rates are not the same. Is one of those obsolete?
Yes, so what the previous council did when we did a significant study with Lewis Young on our water rates, and it appeared the study showed that we really needed to raise our rates, but they decided to tier that over 3 years.
Now let me correct you right there. The Lewis Young didn't really get involved in our user fees. That was our own in-house analysis. But the council last year.
But it was this council.
It was this council decided.
But what we're looking at then is the tiered thing so that we
Yes.
have evidence
Right, and
of
I
that?
just
Is that
decided
why
to
it's-
take out the 2016 since we're already into the
Right.
rate effective for 2017.
Right.
So
Okay.
that was all I was trying to do.
Right,
and-
right.
Then I'm a little curious about the increase in the fluoride fee. Is it actually costing us more, or is it just going up with the general water rate at some?
Well, this
same
was
percentage?
this was the schedule that was approved by the city council, so.
Okay, I don't remember ever seeing a fluoride fee itemized on that, because
Oh, okay. Yeah,
that's
this-
been
this is
kind of
in
a
your
hot button
current-
for me.
This was taken right from the ordinance that was adopted by the city council, I'm quite
My
confident.
Yeah, so I'm not-
recollection,
I'm just-
Stephanie, is that you asked that the fluoride fee be itemized. It wasn't itemized previously, and you
I
you
asked
said
that
you
the
wanted to
fluoride
add-
fee be shown to the residents on their monthly bill, and that was reversed to, we'll mention it in the
Fee schedule.
in the newsletter.
Right.
But I don't remember it ever being itemized that the fee was going up, because if the cost of fluoridating our water is increasing, I'd like that to be something that our citizens know. And I've not been part of a discussion where that was disclosed. I think that may have been increased as just a proportional
Right.
increase based on the overall water thing.
Every fee was increased, what, 10%?
Yeah, we could probably have Randy respond to that, go back to the research that was done for these fees, and just comment on the increase to the fluoride fee.
Okay.
You can
And
see
then at the
everything
end
was
of
just
that.
increased a flat 10%.
Right. So I just want to know if it really is increasing the cost to fluoridate the water, or whether that's just a blanket thing that happens with the water rate. And then at the end of that section with the other culinary water fees, if we could add the word "with" to that statement at the end. Fees will increase in accordance with culinary water rate.
Great, yeah, I see that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
These fees, yeah.
That's on the top of 53.
I have one question, Lisa.
Let me go back, Mayor, just to clarify what I said a minute ago in response to Bill's comments. The water line under the freeway, for example, it was actually paid, has been paid initially with the bond money, the remaining bond money from 2012, 13 bond issue, about 2012. But the study, the impact fee study showed that I think it was about $1 million, at least $1 million of the debt that was issued would be for recoverable from impact fees, as well as specific projects, and that was one of them, the line under the freeway, as well as recovering from impact fees past investment in the water infrastructure. So we are taking that into account with the accountant, Marcus, as we prepare our impact fee report this year. And also as he makes journal entries regarding this past year, he is showing that the $300 and something thousand in water impact fees or water development fees, same thing, was actually applied to the debt service payment. Because we can justify much more than that of the debt service payments coming from impact fees. So we took all of the water impact fees and applied them to the debt service. And then we'll have some more impact fees coming in over time, and those will also be applied to that debt service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa.
And when we get that impact fee updated this year, excuse me, Mayor, we'll provide that to the council. That's due December 31 every year, and we'll show that to you.
My question to you, Lisa, is completely different. On our website, websites typically detect the type of browser you're using, and for example, if you're using a tablet or a mobile phone, it defaults to a mobile browser. But we have the ability to, with our normal website, a link at the bottom to say use the desktop version. Could you see if Municipal Code Online has that same option as the the mobile version, if you're looking at it on an iPad, is not as easy to navigate as something like this.
Well, yeah, their mobile version, I don't like at all. I don't want you to use it or even know it exists.
Right, so if you have, so how do you, right now, I don't see a way to not
Well,
use it.
Right, if they're, okay, so hopefully, and I'll just get Jake to make sure we have the right link, because, let me just get to the staff report on this, sorry. You'll see mobile viewing, you have to go to this mobile, and it's a hard, what does it say?
So when you...
Anyway, it forces it to the desktop if you use this mobile link, and that's what hopefully is on our website. Doesn't it force your iOS device to the desktop version?
No, it defaults to the mobile.
It should, okay, we can fix that.
So if we can fix that.
It needs to be this forced, because the forced goes to the desktop for both, and that's what we want, because you're right, the mobile version is not optimized. You can only search by chapter, and
right, it's
hard, so,
really hard,
okay.
so
But did you notice, if you click on the link that I gave in the staff report for mobile viewing, it should be a forced desktop view.
Ooh, I didn't, but I'll find it.
Okay, and then I'll just work with Jake to make sure we have that link on our website.
Great. So we have a motion on the table to accept this as is today. The motion does not include all the direction to fix all these other things, does it?
Well, that's why I'm going to restate
I've already
the
fixed the
motion.
25 cents and added with.
Thank you.
So those are done.
But we're going to revisit the chicken fees.
So I've got parks, chicken fee, fire impact fee, maybe a little discussion with Randy about how these open cuts and warranty works. And then
Question about the fluoridation fee.
increase, to the fluoridation.
So since Bill's right, I jumped the gun a little bit before we had all the fee structure, and I'm just going to state the motion to approve Resolution 2017-18, adopting the fee schedule with the recommended edits and staff direction to revisit the fees as discussed.
I'll second that.
So it's been restated and reseconded to approve this fee schedule with the direction given to staff. Any further discussion? Since this is fees, let's do this by roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
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 That passes unanimously. You've all voted to increase fees in Centerville.
I don't think
The bike fee went up from 50 cents to $5.
$3.
$3.
Mr. Mayor, how do you feel about the increase in the bike fee? Are you in favor or against that?
I admit I am in violation. My bike is not licensed and tagged, and I have not paid the fee. I didn't realize. I did it when I was, I think, 8 years old or 12 years old. I got the Centerville City sticker, and I have not come back to do that
Well, and let
since.
me tell you, at least my understanding from asking the chief about this some time ago, before this project, they don't enforce, it's not a requirement to have a bicycle license. It's something that's for the benefit of the owner. If it should be stolen, and it can be then returned to the owner.
Should they leave the sticker on?
So
That's right, if they leave the sticker.
Great work, Spencer. It's a huge contribution. Thank you for your excellent work, and Lisa,
Yes,
as
thank
always,
you.
for her great guidance to all of us.
Now, the real question is, you're going to consider municipal law or run from it as fast as you can?
It's been good, so we'll see what happens.
Do you mind, Spencer, if I tell him what your other connection to city government is?
Yeah, sure.
His father is a city councilman in Kaysville. So he's
Yeah,
had
so
a-
he said he knew, sometimes those meetings go till 2 a.m., and I said, well.
Yeah, their meetings,
we're-
our meetings are tame compared to those, right?
Yeah, it's better lately, but yeah, that's a 2 a.m. meeting, so.
On the note,
I don't
we
think
take
we've
10
passed
minutes.
Yes,
1:30.
let's take a break and then quickly come back and conclude our meeting before 10 p.m.
Okay.
You guys had some stick-to-itiveness.
Scouts, you get